on the computer. Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Product Market Fit. I expect we'll probably have more people come in through the waiting room after we get going. That's totally fine. My name is Caleb Talley. I'm the Director of Marketing and Events here at Startup Junkie. For those of you who may not be familiar with Startup Junkie, we're a mission-driven organization based here in Fayetteville in Northwest Arkansas. Startup Junkie exists to empower innovators and entrepreneurs through education, inspiration, and support through no-cost one-on-one consulting, events, workshops, programs, just like this one here today. I'm excited to introduce you to our presenter today, Max, and he is the founding partner at GrowthX. He has extensive experience developing and executing data-driven, scalable, and repeatable go-to-market strategies at the early product stage across various industries and products. His expertise is centered on building systems, tools, and processes and market messaging for teams to accelerate the path to product market fit and exponentially grow revenue. Today's webinar is being live streamed on Facebook as well as recorded. So if you have a question for Max during the presentation, you're more than welcome to drop it in the chat box, or if you're watching on Facebook, drop it in the comment section. We'll make sure every question is answered at the end of the presentation. And so without any further ado, I'll turn it over to you, Max.
Thank you so much, Caleb. Well, hey, everybody on the Zoom, hey, everybody on Facebook Live. Great to meet all of you. As Caleb mentioned, my name is Max Menke. I'm the founding partner at GrowthX. We're a San Francisco-based seed stage venture capital fund with a really radical approach to entrepreneurship. Unlike most VCs and accelerators, we think that every entrepreneur should raise capital in the form of this thing called revenue from these strange people called customers. And we've proudly invested outside of the Bay Area for the past 6.5 years. Many of our LPs, many of the companies and entrepreneurs who invested in are from places like Arkansas. In fact, one of our co-founders, Will Bunker, resides in Arkansas. He's from there. He's a proud member of the community there as well. So excited to share with you all, our tips, our best practices to finding product market fit. I'll tell you all, certainly strap on, because I'm not going to share with you war stories of how we took a company from 0 to 100 million. We're going to get into the subatomic particles of where revenue is going to come from for your business. Why are businesses failing? Why are they failing for reasons that are completely solvable and fixable? And how you can take control of the journey that your company is going on. So, as Caleb mentioned, feel free to start populating questions in the chat. I'll try to keep an eye on the time as best I can. There's a lot of information to cover, so there's product market fit and just, a little hour, so I'll try and do my best. I'm certainly happy to stay on and continue questions, and just want to thank everybody for joining on and being a part of this today. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and let's just get started. Let's jump right into it. So as I mentioned, at GrowthX, we think entrepreneurs should focus on generating revenue. There's a whole lot of companies and a whole lot of advisors and a whole lot of communities that focus on fundraising and building products. But at the end of the day, let's just be clear. The reason why most, not just some, most companies fail is because they fail to get a product to market. Now, back in 2015 or 16, you could go to a venture capitalist and say something along the lines of, well, if I build it, if you give me the cash to build it, the customers will come. Well, we're not falling for that one anymore. And in 2021, you have to be able to demonstrate product market fit. Not only do you need to be able to demonstrate product market fit, or just demonstrate that you can acquire revenue in order to attract investors, but all the right signals are pointed for you, all the right tools are there for you, that if you have revenue, not only will you attract venture capitalists, but you have the ability to choose who are your partners. And you also get to keep more of your equity. And so rather than spending all this time and effort trying to continue to build the product and stay inside the building, we launched GrowthX to help entrepreneurs get outside the building and avoid making those extraordinarily universal and common mistakes that are that relate back to improvising the path to product market fit. And what we see for entrepreneurs, whether they're in Arkansas or Alberta or Albania, is that at the end of the day, most entrepreneurship sales is done by Google search result. It's not intentional, it's not professional. It's mentor chat roulette, and it's Googling cold email templates and pricing strategies, Googling hiring strategies and outsourcing your sales development, which at the end of the day results in runway getting chewed up even faster without really much results to show for it. So as a fund, our primary philosophy is just that traction speaks a whole lot louder than words and pitch decks. Myself and my co-founders, we're entrepreneurs, we're people who take companies to market. And the way that we primarily do that is through what we call the market acceleration formula. For us, products and markets are unique, but the path to product market fit simply is not. There's a formula to it. And that formula, it's not necessarily easy, but there's a way where we can start going to market with intent rather than doing what most people, which is completely improvise the path to go to market fit. So when we invest in companies, we only invest in companies that we can help, that I can jump inside and join the founders to take those companies to market. And when we're able to do that, we're able to get closer to those entrepreneurs, build a traction narrative that enables them to acquire revenue, and also build a traction narrative that enables them to acquire future investment. And so I've been leading this effort across hundreds of different companies for the past 6.5 years. We've helped numerous of our portfolio companies get acquired. 80% of the companies we've taken through have gone to Series A or beyond. We've worked with universities, business schools, large accelerator programs, small accelerator programs, economic development offices. We worked with groups in the US. We worked with corporations. Similarly, we worked B2B, B2C, fintech, health tech, beauty tech. I mean, I worked with a robotic fish that uses AI to swim around fisheries and see when's the right time to start harvesting the fish. And what I've seen from all of that and all that experience and work on at the seed and the scale stage is, as I mentioned before, while products and markets may be unique, the path to finding product market fit is simply not. And there's a big problem within the startup community. It's that we don't define product market fit. We keep you up at night as venture capitalists and as accelerator communities and as entrepreneurial support organizations saying, you better find product market fit, you better have product market fit, or else I'm not going to have a conversation with you. But what is it? Do you know? Do you know a product market fit for your own business? Ask an investor. If they tell you you need to find product market fit, ask them to define it. And you'll hear a lot of stammering and silence, because frankly, it's a term that's often used and very poorly defined. And so a lot of us put all this stress on finding product market fit, yet especially a failure of many of my colleagues in the venture capital space is that they fail to actually define product market fit. And sure, you can Google it. And when you Google it, you get 80 pages of search results and 45 different blog posts talking about what is product market fit. And half of them are, quoting Mark Andreessen saying, well, it's the most important thing in the world. And the other half are quoting Eric Ries, and he's telling you that, well, if you have to ask if you have product market fit, you don't have it. Well, I'm sorry, in 2021, that is simply an unsatisfactory answer. We have to understand that if we have a goal, product market fit, but we don't have a definition of that goal, then that's just a dream. It's not a destination. It's not a place we can get to. And more often than not, that dream turns into a nightmare for most entrepreneurs. So when we think about trying to find product market fit, we think, what are the things that we know we have to do in order to get there? We know that to find product market fit, we have to figure out who we want to talk to. And once we understand who we want to talk to, we have to understand what do we need to say to that person? How do we communicate our value to them? And how do we operationalize and streamline the process of learning and acquiring revenue? How do we go from one conversation to 5 conversations to 15 to 50? And oh, by the way, there's no product market fit without outreach. One of the challenges that I run into, a lot of entrepreneurs around the world, is that they go, well, you don't have product market fit. Well, how do you know? Well, I speak to 3 or 4 people. The only way that you acquire learning, the only way that we can acquire revenue is by generating activity. In hunting, they say the legs feed the wolf. The activity feeds the pipeline, and the pipeline feeds the bank account. And so every day that you don't put effort into outreach is a day in the future where learning or revenue will not come into your bank account or into your business. And if we accomplish all those steps and do them in a way that's process driven, then scale will never be an option. And what happens very frequently is we think, well, in order to find product market fit, I need to scale activity. Scaling activity without a process is just scaling friction. And it only burns up runway even quicker, and it only puts you in a position where you have fewer options to pivot. So what do we need to start doing in order to get to product market fit? We need to stop improvising, and we need to start being intentional with our time and with our effort. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's entirely the opposite is true. You are in control of where you spend your time. You are in control of how you spend that time. And a lot of us, when we're building these companies, we talk about being lean and testing and iterating. Well, if we're going to talk about running, experiment, testing, and iterating, let's use those words the way they're intended to use. Let's take a page out of the scientific method. A scientist, when they're trying to test a hypothesis, they don't throw mud on the wall and just see what sticks. Scientist doesn't pour a little bit of compound A and a little bit of compound B into a beaker, light a fire underneath it, and fold their arms and say, well, we'll see what happens. Stuff tends to happen. No. A scientist knows exactly how much of compound A, exactly how much of compound B, and exactly how hot and how long that fire is going to burn. And before a scientist ever runs an experiment, they do 2 really important things. Number 1, they create the tools to objectively observe the experiment. Scientists do not bring feelings to a data fight. You should not bring feelings to your business. A lot of us talk about running data-driven businesses, but we don't. We use emotion, we use anecdotes. So we're trying to identify a market result, if we're trying to identify product market fit, then we need to define it. We need to take the time to say, these are the metrics that would indicate to me that I've reached there. And once we know what those metrics are, then we create the tools to measure those metrics. And the second thing that any scientist does before they start an experiment is they create a hypothesis. Again, there's a word that I think all of us know, but we don't really understand. A hypothesis is an expected result if conditions are met. It's expected result. It's not guaranteed. The number one question that I get from entrepreneurs on every topic as far as it relates to go-to-market strategy is, how do I know this will work? How do I know this email will work? How do I know this conversational framework will work? How do I know that the market's there? You don't. You gave up certainty as you gave up your job and you became an entrepreneur. If it was a certainty, a corporation would be doing it, right? Somebody would already be making money off of it. That's the trail that you're blazing. But that if you can define the expected result, then you can to visualize and craft the ideal conditions to give that expected result a customer, a pilot, break even, more revenue. You can create the ideal conditions to actually make the experiment work. And if it doesn't work, you can actually identify why it did or did not work. And so when we're intentional about creating that process, then we're actually able to identify who should I be speaking to, why should I be speaking to them, and what am I going to say when I actually talk to them, as opposed to what most of us do. We move fast and we break things, like Mr. Zuckerberg says here in San Francisco. Well, apologies to him. Moving fast and breaking things works great when you just reinvented the internet. Most of us aren't doing that. And so we have to actually pull the market towards us. So rather than moving fast and breaking things and hoping as a strategy that we smash the scale button, we're going to get somewhere. What I encourage people to do is take a page out of some very useful advice from the Navy SEALs. You know, the Navy SEALs, before they ever go anywhere, they have a saying: slow is smooth and smooth is fast. You know, the Navy SEALs get into are running an operation and they don't have a plan, and that plan doesn't have a contingency plan, and everybody doesn't know exactly what they should be doing, when they should be doing it, and how they should be doing it. When the bullets start flying, chaos starts happening, and people lose their lives. Same thing happens with our business. When we just run out into market without a plan and we get punched in the face, it's very disorienting and businesses die. And we think that going faster is somehow going to help us survive? Absolutely not. So what is product market fit? What do we need to do? We need to go slow so that we can go fast. We need to be disciplined to create a process and to drive repeatability through that process. And when you have process and repeatability and predictability, then scale is a natural byproduct. Product market fit is just being able to demonstrate that you can achieve an expected outcome using a prescribed method over and over and over again. If I talk to this customer persona and I deliver this messaging, I expect that this percent of the time I'll be able to turn them into a customer. Now my only problem is I need to speak with more customers, or I don't have enough time to speak with more customers. And now what do I have? I have a problem that venture capital dollars can solve. Who would like to join me? So all of this goes back to, again, the scientific method. What are most people doing today, and what's the one behavior they need to change? We need to stop improvising. I have to start going to market with intent, defending our time, honoring our own time, and also thinking about, why are we trying to acquire revenue? Where are we going to get it from, and where can I get the most amount of revenue for the least amount of effort? And oh, by the way, what is that going to do for me? So the challenge that most people run into from a mindset perspective is that most of us, especially at the early stage, we have a sales and marketing perspective. Think quotas and targets and business plans. By the way, those three things, they're entirely based off of historical performance. Your startup, you don't have that performance. So what are you basing it off of? And so a lot of the time we think about, okay, well, I need to do more sales. I need to do more marketing. Sales and marketing is what you do when you already have a playbook, when you already have that prescribed method, when you already have product market fit. Sales and marketing is something that you can scale because you can bring humans to run a playbook. Where does sales and marketing typically go wrong for most entrepreneurs? You're doing founder-led sales. You're going, this isn't really working. So I'm a technical founder. Oh, I'm just uncomfortable doing sales. So I'm going to bring somebody in. I'm going to bring in a VP of sales. That's going to be my big move. I'm going to put on my adult pants and bring in a VP of sales. And you bring somebody in, and senior enough for the title, but what do we all find out 3 to 6 months later? They're too senior to do the work, because you're not at sales and marketing. You're at market development. That VP of sales who Google or Facebook or Nike, whatever company, that person, they haven't had to have a meeting with a prospect in 15 years. They haven't picked up the phone in 10 years. They haven't had an inbound email or they haven't had to even launch an outbound email in 20 years, because they've always had $1 million of marketing behind them. And they've had a team of people to qualify conversations before them. And sure, they have a Rolodex, but they have no idea how to activate it. And they say, 3 or 6 months later, you go, well, hey, where's the, as the dude says, where's Money Lebowski? and then they say, well, I need leads. Okay, well, let's hire a marketer. And the marketer's in. 3 more months later, and a whole lot of runways getting, where are the leads? Well, I'm doing sales strategy. I need someone to have these conversations. Great. Let's hire my 25-year-old cousin who just graduated from college. He's a nice guy. Maybe he'll be a good salesperson. How does that work out? It doesn't. Because all of this requires a process. And we have to be disciplined to run that experiment, that process-driven effort, and achieve repeatability and predictability so that we have a playbook. And so you're not at sales and marketing, you're at market development. Market development is all about doing unscalable things. Market development is about building a revenue engine, and it is founder-led, and it requires us to go slow so that we can go fast and create that playbook upon which scale is that natural byproduct. So when we're talking about crafting, or we're talking about, doing product market fit and slowing down, the one thing we all need to slow down on is, who the heck is your audience? Who the heck is your customer? And more often than not, the most valuable asset for any business is their ideal customer profile. Just like hypotheses, just like product market fit, this is the term that everybody uses and very few people understand or appreciate. Your ideal customer profile is hands down the most important asset that you have as a business owner, whether you're a startup, a scale-up, a Fortune 500 company. Once you know who your customer is, then you can know the potential value of that customer. Once you know the potential value and what you can charge them, then you know how much you can spend to acquire them as a customer. Once you know how much you can spend to acquire them as a customer, that's going to influence the strategy that are relevant for you to actually acquire them as a customer. Once you know the strategy, then you know the channels will impact your messaging. No, by the way, the customer themselves will impact what you say and how you say it, because nobody cares about your features. What does psychology tell us about everybody's favorite topic? It's themselves. So your ideal customer profile just wants to know, what are you going to do for me? Well, you can't possibly answer that question on your website, in your emails, in your go-to-market strategy if you know who your customer is. And not having an ideal customer profile, well, that's throwing mud on the walls. Your ideal customer profile is the destination. Well, if you don't know how far it is to the destination, how do you know if that's a destination you can ever get to? So this is where when we talk about going slow to go fast, at GrowthX, we dive incredibly deep in the ideal customer profile so that if we only get one shot at it, we know that we're 95% accurate and being in the right market at the right time with the right message so that we'll be successful. And oh, by the way, what are we creating this ideal customer profile for? I'll tell you, the problem for most accelerators is we create an ideal customer profile because we're at week 4 of an 8-week program, and this is what I told you that you need to create. We're going to create a little box persona document to shove it in a drawer somewhere. No, we're creating an ideal customer profile because at some point you have to sell something to another human being. And that's the dirty truth about entrepreneurship that no one wants to talk about. It involves sales. And at the end of the day, you have to get in front of another biological human being made of water and they have hot breath and other stuff. Yuck, right? Get me back onto this thing, my cell phone, so that I can stop interacting with other human beings. The second you decided to be an entrepreneur, you gave up that right. So acknowledge the elephant in the room. Societally speaking, we're uncomfortable with the label salesperson. Even salespeople are uncomfortable with that label. But as an entrepreneur, it's not a choice. You can build products forever, but the world will not see those products go out and start helping people understand what it is that you do for them. So what is sales? Helping. If you take one thing away about sales, it's about understanding people using business acumen and curiosity and empathy for others to seek fit. It's not convincing somebody of a worldview. It's not feature dumping so that somebody can say that they're interested. You don't enter a conversation to change someone's mind. You enter a conversation to have someone convince you that they are worth more of your precious time. Like, every entrepreneur has 3 full-time jobs: product building, market building, and fundraising. Everybody that you spend time with needs to give you something in return. And in return, they need to demonstrate that they are a qualified individual who's going to help you do the thing that you need to do, get that expected outcome, acquire revenue, and do that as quickly and efficiently as possible. So when we're creating that ideal customer profile at GrowthX, what are we trying to do? We're trying to identify which market, which individuals do we have the highest likelihood to acquire as customers and maximize learning with that we can eventually create a repeatable, scalable process with. So what goes into an ideal customer profile? Well, I'll tell you, the number one mistake that entrepreneurs make when creating an ideal customer profile is that it's a persona, it's a business, it's an ideal company profile. But think about your own business. Businesses don't buy anything. Businesses are characters and colors and fonts. Businesses do not have budget. Businesses do not have authority. Companies don't buy anything. People do. So when we think about your ideal customer profile, it does you no service to be able to simply identify a list of companies that you can work with, because you can't have a two-way interaction. You can't seek fit. You can't help a company, but you can help a human being who has budget. And I know we've all been trained, to use these things, our cell phones, to buy things without ever interacting with another human being. But in the real world, outside of our homes and off of our couches, there requires a lot of hand-to-hand contact with our market, so that not only can we learn, but we can seek fit and help. I can't ask Google, I can't ask HEB, I can't ask Bass Pro Shops, hey, how are you guys trying to do business this year? What are your priorities? That's a company. But once I drill into a department and I look at who's the head of that department, head of legal, head of HR, head of sales, and I can see the size of their business, well, now I can start asking questions. I can start making some assumptions. What's your priority? What's your concern? How would I go about doing your job? And what would be the problems that I would hypothesize that would be created in the way that you do your job? And oh, by the way, now I can see those problems, start to understand, where are you losing money? Where are you not making enough money? What are the problems that impact the only document that matters to every business, which is the profit and loss statement? So when we're thinking about your ideal customer profiles, it's not about who is Mr. or Mrs. Right. It's about identifying who is Mr. and Mrs. Right now. Every startup, every scale up has, your TAM slide, your total addressable market slide, $6 trillion. That's wonderful. You're a 4-person company. You would not be able to service a $6 trillion TAM if all of a sudden it all turned on. And likewise, out of that $6 trillion TAM, maybe 10 people actually even know that you exist. So it's wonderful that you have a big potential dollar sign, but it's irrelevant at the moment. The $6 trillion TAM is a diverse array of many different ideal customer profiles. What does Jeffrey Moore talk about in Crossing the Chasm? We have to find our beachhead. We have to identify the innovators and then the early adopters who are eventually going to create credibility with the early and late majority so that our company does go to scale. So how do you find that ideal customer profile? You need to identify, where can I get the most amount of revenue for the least amount of effort right now, given my product, given what my product can actually do today, given my team, how many deals could I actually service, both as customers and as pipeline, given what I need. Do I need $1 million in revenue? Do I need $100,000 in revenue? Do I need 100 pilots? Do I need 1 pilot? Do I need the pilot to be paid? Do I need the pilot to be unpaid? Again, if we don't have a destination, if we don't have a definition of what success looks like, then we can't even remotely begin to identify who should we be spending time with. And the broader your ideal customer profile, the less relevant you are, the less capable you are to be a consultant to your customers. If I have 2 founders, right? Founder A and founder B. Founder A goes out and has 10 meetings in a week, and each of those 10 meetings is with an entirely different ideal customer profile, or even a slightly different ideal customer profile. By the end of the week, the feedback that they get, it's just noise. Their head's spinning because everybody has different needs, everybody has different problems. And they're also, by the way, not able to take what they learned from the first 3 meetings and apply it to the next 3 meetings because it's out of context. Now, founder B, he has 10 meetings, all with 10 people with the same title and the same role and they're all in the same ideal customer profile. And you better believe within just the first 3 meetings, patterns are emerging. And he's able to iterate on his pitch and get better at it and get better results at it. And by the fifth meeting, he's not only getting better at his pitch, he's now consulting, he's now advising. Well, in working with people similar to you or talking with people in similar positions to you, what I'm seeing is this trend. Is that true for you? Okay, well, here are solutions that have worked for them. Again, what are we talking about? Process, repeatability, predictability. There's no repeatability and predictability when you change a variable like who your customer is. The only thing you do is you create noise and activity, and you confuse noise and activity for signal and productivity. Blending is just diluting. So how do we actually go about finding these human beings, right? Again, Jeffrey Moore talks about we need to find early adopters. Why do we need to find early adopters? These are people who have the mindset that they already understand if I take the risk to work with an early stage technology company, I'm going to reap the reward. Well, unfortunately, there isn't a LinkedIn badge for early adopters. There's not a logo you can throw on your website that says, hi, I'm a company that's an early adopter. So a lot of startups say, well, there's no way to identify it. Yes, there is. People communicate their worldviews all around us. You just have to slow down a little bit and read between the lines. So what's an example of an early adopter? If the company has a corporate venture capital unit, if the company has an innovation team, if the company sponsors and supports startup accelerators or demo days or anything like that, what are those behaviors of? Those are behaviors of companies that are spending money to identify early stage companies. That's an early adopter behavior. If you go to somebody's website and it's mobile responsive and looks really good and has a lot of video and all their social feeds are really well coordinated and they're constantly pumping out new content. By the way, all those activities, those require money. That requires somebody investing in their own business. I'm excited about that because I'm going to try and help you invest in your own business. That's a connection. That's also signs of an early adopter. On the flip side, if I go to somebody's website and it looks terrible and I scroll to the bottom and it says copyright 2009 and they still have a link to their MySpace page or all their social links are broken, are those the signs of an early adopter? No. So right there, just doing a little bit of internet research that we could all do on the couch while watching a football game, I'm able to spend 5 minutes of research to save myself 55 minutes of a totally unqualified meeting that never would have gone anywhere in my life. What's another example? Let's say I was crafting a blazing fast Wi-Fi solution for the airline industry, right? It's 10 times as fast as anything any airline has right now. And so I'm going to go to all the major airlines and say, listen, you should start putting this onto your fleet. Well, what would most entrepreneurs do? They'd start putting every single airline on their list of people to contact. Would that be worth their time? No, they're going to create a lot of noise and not get a lot of signal. If I look at Delta, here in the US, Delta routinely wins awards for best customer service, best in-class or best, in-cabin experience. Technologies, they're constantly updating, they're constantly iterating, they're constantly improving and investing in their own business. Did they get there by accident? No. Delta understands that there's return on investment. Delta understands that part of their business model is to take profits, invest it in the business so that they can get more profits, so that they can keep their customers. On the flip side, if I look at Spirit Airlines, a successful flight for Spirit Airlines is making sure that your heart's still beating when you land, right? They don't care if you enjoyed the flight very much. If you get on a flight right now with Spirit Airlines, you don't have Wi-Fi on their plane. And do you think if I bumped into the CEO of Spirit Airlines, he would say, what? They have Wi-Fi on planes right now? Get the board together. How come nobody told me that? No. That's a worldview. That's them demonstrating how they choose to spend or not spend money. So you as an entrepreneur have the opportunity to decide, who are you going to spend time with? Are you going to spend time with the companies that don't care and don't spend money on themselves? Because they're not. The mistake that we make is that we think that people are spending money on us. They're not spending money on us. It's not a charity. They're spending on themselves. This is a purchase to solve a problem. And you only want to spend time with people who have demonstrated that they're willing to part with budget in return for improvement. So when we're thinking about these ideal customer profiles and creating multiple ideal customer profiles, it requires a holistic approach. It's not just chasing dollar signs. We have to be able to project and visualize. And, I get I'm from San Francisco, so when I say visualize, some hippy dippy thoughts come up, but I'm talking about actually planning the steps that we know are going to happen before we actually take them, so that we can identify whether or not it's worth our time and our energy and our runway to take those steps. So for example, if I decide my ideal customer profile, or rather I should say, if I hypothesize that my ideal customer profile are enterprise businesses, well, great. What do I think the contract value is going to be? Hypotheses, right? Let's just call it $250,000. Awesome. That's an exciting number. That'll definitely solve some runway issues. But what do we know as a fact of business? If my contract value is $250,000, that time to close is going to be 12 to 18 months. I talk to entrepreneurs, 2 or 3 entrepreneurs every month, like clockwork, that spend 18 months going down this rabbit hole and tell me that they learned that this relationship existed. There's no market where it's unique. Every company, the more expensive your contract gets, the longer the sales cycle, the more buyers, the more painful it gets. And by the way, if you have an 18-month sales cycle, that sales cycle is going to be rife with opportunities for your buyer to leave, go on maternity leave, change jobs, change roles, get promoted, get demoted. It's an incredibly risky proposition. Okay, well, I don't want to do that. So let's go downstream. Let's change it to SMBs. Average contract value, $10,000 to $15,000. Great, time to close, 6 weeks. Awesome. Well, it's not as attractive on my runway though, because I'm going to need 100 of those deals to be as impactful on my P&L. Well, great. Do you have the bandwidth to fill a pipeline with 100 new customers? Do you have the bandwidth to support 100 new customers over what period of time? Because it's not simply as you win the business and then you're done interacting with the customer. And customers don't just come through all of a sudden. So you have to think about what it takes, how much gas do I need in the tank to get to that destination? If I want a quarter tank of gas, but I need to drive 1,000 miles and I don't know if there's any gas stations on the way, i.e. funding, I've got myself into quite the predicament. So when we're thinking about each of these individual ideal customer profiles, when we're trying to stack rank and prioritize them and get them on a piece of paper so we can identify which ideal customer profiles are the most relevant, we have to keep in mind that it's not unique. Remember, products and markets are unique, but the path to product market fit is not. The reasons why businesses buy is not unique. Every business buys for more reasons: make money, save money, keep, acquire, or retain a competitive advantage, and stay out of jail. So your job when you're seeking fit, when you're creating that ideal customer profile, is to understand, how does this person do their job today? And as they're doing that job, what is the impact that the way that they're doing that job today has on their ability to make money, or to save money, or to keep that a competitive advantage, or to stay out of jail? And if you want to understand why an ideal customer profile buy, take each of these 4, flip them on their head. What's the problem that they're facing today? They're not making enough money. Opportunity cost. I'm hiring the wrong salespeople. They're not hitting quotas. So I'm not making enough money. Save money. I'm doing things on pen and paper and Excel spreadsheets, spending too much time doing things that could be made time away from the things that are actually cognitive, that actually have risks associated to my business, right? I'm out of jail. We're not properly disposing of hazardous materials. If the government finds out, I could get slapped with a fine. Every single business has problems that present themselves on the profit and loss statement. The mistake that most entrepreneurs make is that they solve the scratch, right? Oh, you've got a rash in your arm. Let me solve that. But the rash comes from an infection in the kidney. You have to get into the kidneys. You have to get into the organs, the P&L major organs of any business. And you have to find out, getting into the bloodstream, where those problems are in order to have a pain that's going to happen to you to solve. Those are the main pain points for B2B. Now, for B2C, those rules get thrown out the window. For B2C, consumers buy for entirely emotional decisions. They don't have a budget. Yes, they have an allowance, a certain amount that they'd like to spend, but they don't have a P&L. Most people aren't managing it that closely. Look at an iPhone. There are plenty of phones that, text, call, send emails, surf the web, all that wonderful stuff. But why do people buy iPhones? It's an emotional decision. They're a status symbol to some. People are afraid of change and moving to a different, operating system. Most people just don't want to be the only person who's texting in green on the group chat thread. I don't want to be that guy. All my friends text in blue, right? Let's look at, here in the States, we have pharmaceutical ads, right? Well, if you see a pharmaceutical ad for arthritis medicine, what do you see? Do you see grandma laying in bed? No, they're playing I'm Walking on Sunshine and she's playing with the grandkids. What's the emotion that they're playing on? Grandma knows she can't go outside because her knees hurt. They don't need to beat her over the head with a problem. They're projecting joy, because joy is the emotional problem that is solved for when they solve a biological issue. Grandma doesn't care about how the compounds are made. Grandma wants to spend time with her grandkids. So you need to dive in what that pain is, because again, it doesn't matter what you do. It matters what you do for somebody. And as you're thinking about that ideal customer profile, you need to think about who that somebody is. And 9.9 times out of 10, the only person that you really need to be thinking about is the economic buyer. In every organization, the higher up you go into that organization, the more a person is just a slave to the spreadsheet, a slave to the P&L. And so those individuals, they rarely know even how the job gets done on the ground at the bottom, at the bottom floor of the tower. All they know is that they create new strategies, and then they wait 4 months and they see for those strategies to bubble back up into data, and they either made more money or saved money or have a competitive advantage, or everything went against the way that they thought it would go. And so when we're thinking about your ideal customer profile and identifying specific problems and getting into your customers' keystrokes, you don't want to do that from a persona basis. You don't want to do that from a customer and industry basis. You need to focus on an individual human being. How does that person do their job? What are the challenges to their job? What are the priorities for that person and their job in 2021 and beyond? And it doesn't take a lot of work to A, identify the economic buyer, but B, understand how they do things. All you have to do is go onto LinkedIn, find your economic buyer, read their description, read what they say their responsibilities are. Do that over 50 individuals. Go to monster.com, go to Indeed, look for open job recs for your economic buyer. They will tell you what their responsibilities are. They will tell you what the expected job is. And just keep one thing in mind. It doesn't matter whether you're an economic buyer, a user buyer, it doesn't matter if you're the CEO or the janitor. Every single one of us has metrics that we are measured by. And on some kind of regular basis, whether it's passively through our quarterly check-in or whether it's from the bank knocking on our door, we're measured by those metrics. And so your job is to understand the metric of the economic buyer. What number or numbers keep them up at night? What number do they have to present to the board, to the CEO, to the head of their department? And how do you impact those numbers? Because that's the only thing that they care about. They don't care about how the sausage gets made. They want to know, what do you do for me? So transitioning from hypothetical, how do we actually do this? How do we at GrowthX in the Market Generation Program or MXP Online actually help entrepreneurs identify who is Mr. and Mrs. Right? Where can they get the most amount of revenue from the least amount of effort? It starts with this template. We start by collecting data about multiple ideal customer profiles, and we get that data out of our head where it can be transformed, where it can be turned into anecdotal information, and we put it on paper so we can actually view it and share it with others and identify based off the data, not feelings, who's Mr. or Mrs. Right. So we start with an ideal industry. And yeah, you got to pick an ideal industry. And then you pick the ideal companies. Who is Spirit Airlines versus who's Delta and Singapore Airlines? And by the way, if you're going through this exercise and you can't seem to find more than a handful of ideal companies, that's a market signal. That's a signal that this isn't an ICP. You've either gone too narrow or the market that you thought existed doesn't exist. And wouldn't you rather find that out in 10 minutes than in 10 months? I certainly would. And I've gone through it. And I've done this exercise where we've gone through and said, boy, I would think there'd be more of these companies out there, but they're just not. Maybe the timing's off the market. Maybe they're not ready. Once you have those ideal companies, then you identify the ideal departments within those companies, legal, HR, sales, whatever it might be. Once you have the department, look for the economic buyer. Who's the influencer? Who's the person who actually pulls on the purse strings? And then again, once you understand who the person is, now you can understand how they do their job, what are their keystrokes, how do you impact those keystrokes, and how do you impact the metrics that they're measured by? And if you can break all that down, you'll be able to succinctly and effectively understand the value that you create for them. So I'll take an example from our own portfolio. This is Aptology. Aptology is a portfolio company of ours that uses behavioral analytics to identify and predict which job candidates will likely become top performers in your business. So what they do is they take your existing team, they give them a behavioral analysis, they take the results of the behavioral analysis, and they marry it with historical performance data. And from that, you have a behavioral profile. And so other people can take that same test, and you can see how close they are to that behavioral profile, which is for top performers. So think about the way that most people hire, right? It's highly subjective. You read through a bunch of resumes and you make a bunch of subjective decisions. Well, this is enabling people to use data and predictive analytics to make better hiring decisions. Now, what's exciting about Aptology from an investor perspective is also what's terrifying from a go-to-market perspective. Everybody hires the same way, essentially, and everybody needs this technology. Everybody needs this software. Again, if we're everything to everybody, we're nothing. We're not relevant to anyone. So who is our beachhead? Where do we get started? Well, first of all, who makes the most who makes the most subjective hiring decisions? Sales teams. There aren't degrees for sales teams. There are certificates, but they're not really standardized. They're not really agreed upon. Just because you were successful at one company does not mean you'll be successful in the next one. Salespeople can have English degrees, CS degrees, they can have doctorates. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Some people say, I want Division I or Division III athletes, and they're the best. There's just no rhyme or reason to that. I want introverts or I want extroverts. No rhyme or reason to it, right? So when we look at sales teams, okay, that's still a broad range, right? You have everything from retail sales at the Gap and Old Navy to, people selling Watson solutions for IBM in the millions and millions of dollars. Again, those are different worldviews, those are different needs, those are different pain points at different scales. Well, who is the biggest pain point that I can solve? If the person who sold you jeans at the Gap, gets fired or walked away, well, the Gap doesn't really care all that much. They didn't invest that much in that person. It's not like you get a call from that person saying, hey, I left the Gap and I went over to, Abercrombie and Fitch, and you should take your business elsewhere. That doesn't happen. Now, if I'm running a portfolio, if I'm a financial advisor for Wells Fargo or Merrill Lynch, or if I'm working, over at Tesla and I move over to a different company, you can be sure that I'm going to pull a few people, a few clients, a few employees with me. So as we got deeper and deeper into what happens when you increase the ticket size, we came across two really interesting statistics. Number one, the cost of making a bad sales hire for an enterprise grade sales team is about $150,000 to $250,000. It's a lot. The cost of hiring a bad sales manager or VP of sales is around $1.5 $5 million. I don't care if you're Oracle, if you're Google, if you're Facebook, if you're Salesforce. That is a huge amount of money burning a hole in your P&L for no good reason. And all of it is based off of this exercise. Well, I read 100 resumes. I like her font. I don't like the school that he went to. Let's bring them in. He made a bad joke. She wore some clothing that made me uncomfortable. He's really funny. She's really thoughtful. Does any of that actually tell us anything about whether or not someone's going to be good at their job? Well, for $1.5 million, the answer is no. So that's where we got started. After reviewing almost 20 different ideal customer profiles, we said, okay, it's mid-market enterprise technology companies. Who are our ideal companies? So there are two factors that started our list building. Number one, companies with a minimum of 100 sales reps. Why was that important for us? Our data showed that as soon as we got below 100 sales reps, we went from about 90% predictive accuracy to about 70% predictive accuracy. I'm not going to put my product in a position where it's going to fail, because what's that going to create? It's just going to create churn. What's my expected result? Product will do what I say it's going to do when I want it to do that thing. So if I put my product in a position to fail, I'm compromising my own experiment. Next, we looked for every company that was an award-winning company for best place to work, best place to hire for 5 out of 5 Glassdoor ratings. Now, Aptology will tell you they help reduce turnover. They help reduce bad hiring decisions. These are companies that are great at hiring. So you'd think, well, they don't have a problem, right? Why don't they have a problem? Because they spend money. They didn't get there by accident. That company didn't get to 5 out of 5 Glassdoor ratings and listed as the top place to sell for, to work for, the best culture by accident. They got there by spending money on themselves, not on you, but on yourself. And so when we look at the companies that are the worst place to work for, 1 out of 5 stars, similarly, how did those companies get there? It wasn't on accident. They're choosing not to solve those problems. Yeah, I could make a huge dent in their P&L by solving turnover issues, but I'm going to have to convince them to change their behaviors. And anybody will tell you, that's probably one of the hardest things to do on planet Earth, is to get someone to change their beliefs and their behaviors. Once we understood who those companies were, then the functional groups are straightforward: sales and human resources. The people we were going after: heads of sales, chief revenue officers, heads of HR. What were their business issues? Really simple. If I have the wrong salespeople in there, there's an opportunity cost. They're not going to be hitting my lead list, so I'm not going to hit my quota, so I'm not going to be making enough money. And oh, by the way, I'm going to be losing money by having to double the cost per hire. If every person that I hire, I have to hire another person to replace them, that makes my cost per hire twice as much. So what am I solving for? I'm helping them make money. I'm helping them save money. And oh, by the way, for the ideal companies, I'm also helping them keep a competitive advantage. What's the competitive advantage for an employer or a sales team that's ranked as the best place to work? They get the best talent, right? The best, if you're ranked as 1 out of 5 stars on Glassdoor, sure, plenty of people are going to come to your website, but they're not going to fill out the application, right? As opposed to if you're consistently ranked as one of the best places to work, those people graduating from the nice colleges, who are the hustlers, who are the people who can really make an impact, they want to work in the places where employees are supported. So that's a competitive advantage that's going to impact their P&L. So what's the value of what Aptology does for this ICP, for this human being, the CRO? And by the way, this is the first sentence of all of our email campaigns. Aptology helps CROs at industry-leading technology companies increase revenue while decreasing the cost per new hire through our predictive hiring technology. And there are 3 really important things that are happening in that sentence that go above most people's heads, mostly because they're not CROs, which is fine. But 3 really important things that happen in there only because we've gone through this exercise. Number 1, when do I start talking about the product? It's the last thing that I talk about, because it's the least important thing. Frankly, it doesn't even matter. I don't have to talk about my product. I could just end it as decreasing the cost per new hire, period. Number 2, who am I talking to? Does the audience, does the reader or the listener have to do any work to resonate and to realize that this is actually written for me. No, quite the opposite. I'm spoon feeding that information to them. So the first thing that they read is that, hold on, they're talking to me, so I better pay attention to what's up next because it's relevant. And the third and most important thing that's in here is increase revenue while decreasing cost per new hire. I didn't choose those metrics out of a hat. I researched CEOs. I researched what were their top trends, what are their top priorities, what are their metrics that they're measured by. You start researching CROs. These are the metrics they have to present to the seat on the board every quarter. And I just said, I help people who look exactly like you solve the problem that keeps you up at night. Now I have their attention, but I can only write this sentence by getting into their workflow and targeting a human being. And so following up on this, by the way, I'll share it out through the boys here. I'm going to give you this template so you can start doing it yourself. And so you can actually start building these ICPs and taking each of your hypotheses through a robust and a standardized methodology so that you can understand the only thing that matters, which is not what you do, but what do you do for your customer? What do you do for the person that you're trying to acquire revenue from? And if you don't get into those keystrokes, if you don't understand how someone does their job, then most of your conversations will be you feature dumping, you selling, and most of those conversations will end in a way many of us are all too familiar with. You have a great pitch, you share all your features, and then they say, well, this was really great, Max, I appreciate it. Found it very interesting, you're super nice. Can you send us a little bit more information? I'm gonna run it up the flagpole and I'll get back to you. And what happens? They never get back to us because I spent 45 minutes talking about features and I never understood or said a single thing about a problem that I solved for them. So just wrapping up briefly, one of the best practices that I've seen for the companies, both inside and outside of our portfolio, who've been most successful with this ICP exercise is, as we like to say, to focus on the 50. I challenge you, because it's not easy, I challenge you, I dare you to create a list of 50 human beings, get their LinkedIn profiles, 50 human beings who are pre-qualified, 50 early adopters who you should spend time with. What do most people do? They get a list of 500 human beings and they hope that the right people show up. Hope is not a strategy. Don't bring feelings to your data fight. You have the option to choose who you spend time with. If I get in front of somebody that I know I solve a problem for, I'm going to accelerate that path to revenue. If I spend time with Spirit Airlines, I'm just going to waste time, right? So focus on that 50. It's not easy, but again, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. If I engineer the right leads into my funnel, then I'm going to get the right data and the right revenue, and that's going to create the predictable, repeatable process that unlocks scale. Lastly, what are just, just as we wrap up, what are some of the best practices that I've seen and from a lot of really great founders over the years? One, you heard me say it many times, be intentional. Don't improvise. A lot of the times we improvise things that we see others doing because we think it's free. It's not free. It has a cost. It has a cost in your time. It has a cost in your runway. Perfect example. Someone launches a 500-person email campaign. Have you ever written an email campaign? Have you ever built a data list before? Do you know anything about writing copy or call to action optimization? No? Well, then why do you think that if you create an improvised process, you're not going to get improvised results? If you do things as an amateur, you're going to get amateur results. You might get lucky. Most often you won't. So be intentional. Understand and stop yourself before you improvise and think about what is it that you really want and need. Number two, be persistent. SalesLoft, an industry leader in sales automation, says that the most optimal campaign, a first meeting with an individual you've never spoken to before, is 15 touches over 16 days across 3 channels. That's a ton of activity. It requires a ton of intentionality. it requires a lot of thought and effort to get into somebody's inbox. On the flip side, just because somebody doesn't respond to your email or doesn't respond to your voicemail, that isn't an indication of product market fit. That isn't even an indication of interest. People's lives are this big. Our time in their inbox is this tiny little sliver. We have no idea what's happening in the rest of their life. No response is just an empty field in the data spreadsheet. You can't take those things personally. And I know I'm saying that while also acknowledging that it does feel personal. It does feel personal when you write someone that 5th email and they haven't responded to you. You're like, they must, Max, you're an idiot. They must hate GrowthX. They must not want to work with you. It's just not real. It's a mirage. People are busy. Earn the opportunity by putting in the work. And I'll share with you a story. This is actually a group we were working with out of Chattanooga for about a year and a half. And I was working with the founder, and we found this contact at Salesforce that was like, of our focus on the 50 list, he was like 1A, tier 1, everybody else was below him. And I teed up some emails for the founder. 5 emails later, the founder's like, I'm not reaching out anymore. This guy clearly isn't interested. We're making ourselves look bad. I said, how do you know that? Well, clearly isn't interested. Again, no data to show that. So I just asked him, what's this opportunity worth if we get it? He said, easily $500,000. For $500,000, you're not going to write another email? Okay, fine. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to I'll carry the ball forward. On the 10th email, so 9 emails unresponded to, what did I hear back? By the way, this person was pretty high up in Salesforce. So I'm definitely trying to break down a fairly sizable vault door. 10th email, hey, Max, thank you for your persistence. Things have been crazy here. We want you guys to jump on the Dreamforce, but it's happening really soon. So if we're going to make it happen, we need to meet with you guys this week. Can you guys meet with us? By the way, that deal closed for $750,000. I've got 1,000 stories like that. Do not mistake no response for no or no fit. It's just an empty data field. Next bullet point, personalize as much as possible. Again, when you personalize, you create signal and productivity. You're actually able to create revenue. When you spray and pray, you create noise and you create busy work. It isn't anything that actually moves the ball forward. And lastly, if you're doing all this work to create revenue, one of the simplest things you can do is just be responsive. And as soon as somebody responds to you, as soon as that email comes in your inbox, respond. Just get right back to them. The rate of decay for someone's activity to reach back out to you once they've sent you that first email is incredibly fast. Even a handful of hours significantly reduces the likelihood that somebody will respond to your message. So if your revenue beliefs are to grow revenue or to find product market fit, to scale your business, at some point your behaviors have to start reflecting those beliefs. And if you take one thing away from this entire presentation, it's that at the end of the day, a lot of us are trying to find product market fit, and we're hoping that the market will do it for us, or we're handing the responsibility to somebody else. The responsibility falls squarely on your shoulders. And if you want to grow revenue, if you want to start getting traction, you got to start making those deposits every single day, because the market's not going to do it for you. But the good news is that you're in charge of where that journey goes and how soon you get there. So I went a little bit over. Happy to answer any questions that anybody has. Really appreciate everybody listening in. I'm going to send over this presentation so that you have it. I know the boys are recording it as well, and I'll likewise make available access to the ideal customer profile template so you can do it. If anybody wants to reach out, I'm just max@growthx.com. Really grateful to spend the time with you guys, and as I said, I'm happy to hang out for a little bit and answer any questions that folks have and just hang out. So thanks everybody. Thanks guys for hosting me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate you. And like Max said, we are recording this. I'm going to send out the link to this video if you want to rewatch it or share, and as well as, the resources he mentioned here. So if you have questions for Max, feel free. You're welcome to drop it in the chat box. You can unmute yourself and ask. We do have a question in the chat right now. It's from Quinn. He asks, how does your ICP methodology differ for B2C versus B2B? And what are the new profile sectors you focus on in B2C?
So for B2B and B2C, the main differences is that for B2C, there's just a lot more data. You can track, much better, intent and where people go on the internet, and everywhere they go, they leave a breadcrumb. So it's very easy to see what they're doing, as opposed to B2B, where people can tend to hide their intentions, behind the vest a little bit more. So for B2C, when we talk about ideal customer profiles, more often than not, we need to create more than one ideal customer profile. We do need to start creating slightly broader personas. But the same challenge applies. A lot of times we talk about ideal company personas with B2B. With B2C, I still see people making the same mistake. Okay, well, we're looking for moms. Moms is not a persona. You can't track moms. Are they white moms? Are they black moms? Are they in the South or are they in Northern California? Are they poor? Do they have a college? Do they not have a college degree? Do they have back pain? Do they have knee pain? Do they have 2 kids? Do they have 5 kids? Are they divorced? The great thing about the internet is that you can sub-segment all those different pieces. You have the opportunity to be super targeted to a very specific segment. So whether it's B2B or B2C, you want to go incredibly deep. The difference with B2C is that you have the ability to see where other people within that profile are going for help, and then start to offer help of your own without there being much friction. In B2B, you've got to go and earn the right to that conversation. So with B2C, again, I'd say all boiled down, you have a lot more data to get incredibly more targeted. At the same time, you've got to create more than one customer profile, because it likely is going to require a diverse blend of people by product to start seeing enough traction to make it interesting. And then what are the new profile sectors you focus on in B2C? I'm not, for our fund, we actually don't focus on B2C, we focus on B2B. I might be misinterpreting that question though, but that's sort of from our fund profile. Although I'll say, anecdotally, B2C, the hottest thing right now appears to be non-alcoholic. I don't know why, but the absolute hottest thing that everybody's hunting for right now. Seems crazy to me.
Interesting. Any more questions for Max? Like you said, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask if you'd like as well. All right. Well, if not, I would like to say thank you everybody for watching and participating today. Max, I want to thank you again for leading this presentation. It was great. I'm going to send everybody a follow-up email, like I mentioned with this video resources, and I will copy Max there as well for those who might want to reach out. Y'all have a great day.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. I'm gonna, I've dropped a little follow-up link in the chat as well, and I'll follow up today with some resources, and just appreciate, hanging out with everybody, meeting you all, and looking forward to doing many more of these.
Absolutely. Take care, everybody.
All right, bye, guys.